All right, Mike and Dennis, welcome to the Wealth Tech Podcast. I am happy to have you guys on the show. We're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, alternative investment data management, which has been, I think, one of the biggest productivity innovations in the family office space in the past 5 years for sure. And it's certainly a space that has evolved far beyond just gathering documents and converting data and now into providing insights into transparency. Would you guys both mind kind of giving a brief introduction of yourself, and then Mike, if you wouldn't mind giving an overview of Canoe Intelligence, that'd be great.
Yeah, sure thing. Dennis, you want to kick off and I'll jump in?
Sure. Dennis Mangalindan, Senior Director of Sales, 22 plus years working in fintech, the last 2.5 months at Canoe. Prior to that, I was at SEI Family Office Services slash Archway for 14 plus years. I actually come from an accounting family. There's 7 accountants in my family, so you can say I was born with debits and credits in my cradle.
All right. I'm Mike Muniz. I'm one of the founding partners of Canoe, Chief Strategy Officer of the business. Mark, appreciate you having us on. We're really excited to be here. My background's, I come from the private markets alternative space. I started at Cambridge Associates and have spent the last 15 plus years in the startup world working with alternative investors on both the GP and the LP side. And more specifically about Canoe, we launched this business in 2017. We spun Canoe out of a family office in New York City. That family office, Portage Partners, had built a technology that effectively replaced or filled the role of their back office. This tech went out and gathered documents from their managers, extracted data, and fed that data into a front end that they also had built. I was brought in along with a partner to assess the commercial viability of Canoe. And the first time we saw the platform process documents in seconds, our jaws effectively hit the floor. And we knew that this is something that anyone allocating to alternative funds, private funds would benefit from. As you know, I think your listeners know very well, prior to the last several years where sort of technology has been introduced into the space, anyone allocating to alternative funds were managing those funds from an accounting perspective, a reporting perspective, an analytical perspective with bodies, with people. Those people could have been their own team, they could have been offshore managed service providers, but anything related to gathering capital account statements and financial statements and tax documents like K-1s or capital call notices was all done with people. And this technology was the first to market that really transformed how firms could manage their alternatives, free up time to focus on higher order activities. And we've been fortunate enough to build a fantastic client base across not just the single family and wealth space, but the institutional space. We have 450 clients going to 500 by the end of the year around the world. It's been a great ride and excited to tell you more.
Well, that's great. I love hearing about innovation that gets spun directly out of the family office. You know the problem, you live the problem. If anybody knows anything about family offices, they know one is that they have a high exposure to alternative investments, and two, this used to be really a pervasive problem without a solution that had to be thrown at it with bodies, and not just bodies, but often it was a high level
Yeah,
person, a CFO that was having to interrogate documents and to be able to translate that information into their accounting system. I know talking to some family offices back in the day and doing some research around this, it was, one family office talked about how it was like a job of cleaning bathrooms at the airport. Like, somebody's got to do it, and it's an
right.
important function, but nobody wanted that first mile kind of activity to be done. And obviously, Canoe's gone far beyond that. But I'd love to talk about a little bit more about what makes Canoe unique.
Yeah, Mark, I might steal that bathroom, airport bathroom analogy. I like it. I'd say from our perspective, we've seen we've seen this sort of category evolve over the last 8 years. First and foremost, I think taking a technology first approach and identifying where to fill bring humans into the loop has really resonated. So our view is that this is not, post investment operational workflows for alternatives is not something that firms will ever be able to completely set and forget. But there's so much low-hanging fruit with respect to redundancy, manual, menial work, as you mentioned, often performed by highly paid professionals, CIOs, even in some cases. Technology can automate the vast majority of this. So we've been really thoughtful, I think, in terms of building our platform to be driven by technology first and foremost, which brings, significant data quality and accuracy, speed, reliability and redundancy in a good way, while also identifying and directing people to leverage their expertise where it's best leveraged. So that's been our approach.
Yeah, Canoe is certainly a market leader with some marquee clients, great client base, great partner network as well. Dennis, we've had an opportunity to go way back. I think we probably first met when you were at Financial Navigator. And over your 2 decades of experience and working with family offices, what have been some of the common problems that family offices that have kind of come to you with that you've seen? And how have you seen that shift over, say, the past 5 years?
Family offices and the saying, if you've seen one family office, you've only seen one family office, is still rings true to this day. Many of them are looking for the right way to solve a problem. But the problem is there is no blueprint out there. But what I have seen family offices do repeatedly is they're now embracing this idea of outsourcing as part of the back office for accounting, reconciliation, and reporting. They're really leaning on experts to help them understand how they can bring their data together and report on it. Many of them are also now open to the idea of leveraging consultants to help them think through some of the problems, and whether the consultants are helping them pick technology, whether the consultants are helping them find a service provider. That's something that many family offices were closed off to for many years. Just because you've got the best and brightest working doesn't necessarily mean you have the expertise. And now they're actually going out, talking to people, learning, going to events, picking the brains of folks like yourself to understand, how can we do this better? I think some of the challenges that family offices face today is integrating all the systems they have in their fintech stack and getting the value out of it. I've seen family offices go out and buy software every time there's a problem. Oh, we're going to buy another piece of software. And next thing you know, you've got 7, 8 platforms. But the saying, jack of all trades, but master of none. And you're not using the software to its full capabilities because you continue to bring in other applications. And I think that's a detriment to the organization and to what vendors are trying to do. I think if they spent more time talking to vendors, getting more training, really understanding how those applications can work, they can really solve it without having to throw money at it.
Yeah, I think those are good points. I definitely see that the family offices are much more professional, looking to modernize, more open to outsourcing, certainly more open to using consultants to help them figure out who should I outsource with, technology, what's their tech stack, how should the tech stack look. Implementation tends to be still a big issue. Change management still a certain huge issue for family offices and firms in general. It's not just specific to them, that's more of a people issue than a technology issue, but you're seeing it certainly a lot more professionalization within the family office, which is great. Like, let's talk about alternative investments. There's a ton of friction within that process, right? And that it seems like in some ways, especially the LP to GP interaction, it kind of went from a fax to a PDF and didn't seem to involve much beyond that. Can you talk about the various points of friction and how family offices can gain efficiencies throughout the kind of the investment life cycle?
Yeah, it's such a great point. In the privates, we still live in this analog PDF heavy world, and I think there's at some point in the future we're likely to move to a digital mechanism through which information is exchanged that doesn't exist today. What I think we focus on at Canoe is trying to create that experience for the end investor, for the family office, while managing, the frictions that come along with the PDF. And so, the big things for us is how do we provide access to the documents and then the information at your fingertips. A lot of times family offices deal with, hey, one person went and downloaded the K1 here and saved it in this area, and it's on their desktop, and I got to get that to my accountant. And another one is, managing the execution of a capital call, and it's saved in the drive, but it's saved to the wrong folder. There's so many touch points associated with an investment after you make it that it's very easy to make some of these mistakes.
Yeah.
Especially when you're focused on other things. And so, our job is to come in and gather the documents, remove the frictions associated with logging into portals, save those documents down, provide access to to the entire org, and then ultimately get the information from those documents that our clients need to drive institutional quality reporting and insight. So that's our approach. I think everyone right now is trying to do more with less. And so this is not just about accounting or reporting. I mentioned tax, I mentioned treasury, compliance, front office, running fund monitoring or diligence on new funds. This problem touches sort of the entire back to middle, the front office of an organization. And our view is that centralizing the throughput and the flow of data and information through a single platform like Canoe provides a lot of, leverage and reduces a lot of risk.
So using Canoe as a single platform kind of helps minimize some of the things like lack of security master, QSIPs, standard
Absolutely.
pricing, those type of things that you see in the public market side, right? But aren't necessarily
Absolutely.
available in the alts. I think one of the things too is that the technology has come a long ways, mainly because of AI. I think OCR never really worked or didn't work to the level of degree of accuracy that you needed to actually make it worthwhile or productive. Tell me, how has AI impacted Canoe and specifically, but also
Yeah.
kind of the whole alts investment data management ecosystem?
Yeah, it's been interesting, really amazing to see over the last 18 months how quickly technology has evolved. I think, your listeners would probably, can attest to that. So you're right, OCR templates and models of the past were not really effective. So we've always been sort of using more of the natural language processing AI-oriented approach because the formatting and depth of information reported in these documents is just, you need a little bit more flexibility and intelligence as part of the process. So what I think has been interesting is, we find that the most sophisticated family offices think of data as an asset, not as a chore. And with AI, you have the ability to access data far more efficiently and ultimately use that data in ways that you maybe hadn't used it in the past. And so I think tapping that and trying to leverage AI to make better decisions, faster decisions, get more information about the underlying holdings of a fund, the historical track record of a fund, the themes going on in the market. All of that is sort of more readily available with the emergence and adoption of AI. And so I think that's been the big focus for us is how do we lean into clients who do view data as an asset and want to use AI to unlock that asset more than they have in the past.
Yeah, I think that's, AI in a couple places. One is just the fundamental taking unstructured information, converting into structured information, being really good at it, right? And that's a huge efficiency gains that are being unlocked there. But the other one too is that these family offices have always sat on a huge pile of data, but they hasn't necessarily been able to leverage that data. I think, to your point, data is the new oil, right? And you need
Exactly.
to be able to, if your data's scattered everywhere and you're not able to, even sometimes just struggle to get your hands on it, never mind to be able to get insights from it, that you're now seeing AI really be able to provide a lot of insights on that, which I think is great. Dennis, best of breed, comprehensive, all in ones. You've been, both sides of the stack there. And, there's not one right answer. Both are appropriate. It depends on I think a lot of different reasons for the family's personality, technology personality, or operational requirements. But even the all-in-ones still need to integrate. There's no really one system that can truly do it all. Talk to me a little bit about what is Canoe's approach to integrations, and how have you seen the industry move forward with kind of open APIs and really embrace that kind of ecosystem approach?
That's a great question. But before we dive into integrations, I think we should talk a little bit about data portability. With firms ramping up their tech stacks and family offices becoming more adept at eliminating duplicative entry, there's a desire to repurpose data across one or many systems. And whether that's a general ledger, portfolio performance system, there's an idea that firms own their own data, which means they know that there is an opportunity to push data across multiple applications. And with that in mind, your question about integrations comes into play. There is this desire for cross-pollination of financial and investment data into downstream systems. And Canoe has developed integrations with the leading GLs, portfolio management systems, widely used by not just family offices, but by institutions, OCIOs, asset allocators, and others across the board. We're system agnostic. Now, this idea of open APIs and data standards and alternatives, it's going to continue. We're big on APIs. In fact, oftentimes when we talk about APIs, we push out our developer kit. Now, what's interesting, Mark, is with data standards, and Mike can attest to this, we grew up with OFX, QFX, QFI data file formats from the brokerage and the custodial world, and those were the standards back in the day. There is no standard right now from what I have seen. What we do have is ILPA, format for reporting. It's a great foundation, but we have yet to see any company take that to the next level. Hopefully that'll happen in the coming years.
It makes sense. I often say that the three biggest tech trends that have been impacting family offices all began with an A, right? AI, API, and alts data management. Alts data management is really kind of, takes all three of those impacts. Let's talk about what is next for the alternative investment industry. A lot of people talking about alts going mainstream. Even before you get down to the individual retail level, you're starting to see the advisors, multifamily offices, even just regular RIAs that are serving more of a mass affluent, starting to get interested in it, starting to have clients that have exposure to that asset class. Certainly the degree of tolerance for inefficiencies a lot lower when you get into those markets, but where's the market going in terms of democratization of alternatives?
Yeah, it's a topic we have discussions about internally and externally seemingly every week. Mark, I'd say before I answer that, two things to add to the last question. We are seeing a lot of Snowflake and Databricks. So you think of how are firms leveraging data internally as an asset and sort of consolidating that becomes an interesting sort of data lake, data warehousing becomes an interesting architecture. And we see that at sort of the largest firms that's starting to trickle down. The other piece is standardization, and that'll actually segue a bit into my response to your democratization comment. But there is a lack of standardization, I think, partially on both sides. Both sides are to blame, meaning I don't know that LPs amongst themselves can agree on what a standard format or depth level of reporting from an alternative fund manager would be. Everyone sort of defines standard themselves. They need to get the data where they need it to go, and that's for them standard. On the flip side, GPs aren't necessarily being regulated the same way public funds are, and aren't mandated to provide any level of depth outside of what they feel comfortable with. And so our view is that a central platform that kind of creates an exchange of information that sort of reduces friction associated with standardization is an immediate answer, right? And Canoe does that, right? We provide LPs and allocators data in their standard, so that they can action it and use it. And we get all the data from the GPs that they're reporting, not just the ending balance, not just the net cash flow. And so that access to more data at your fingertips as a Canoe client is really, really valuable. On the democratization piece, I think you're starting to see, I mentioned earlier that this idea that the private markets don't operate the same way public markets do. It's very clear. It's very analog. I do think we at Canoe think that at some point in the future, that's going to change. There will be a convergence. And I think you're starting to see that in two ways right now. Obviously, access. And so platforms like Case, like iCapital, like Moonfair, and others are making it easier for individuals, high net worth folks managing capital at large scales with limited alts exposure to access funds that they weren't accessing in the past. The other is vehicle structure. And so you're seeing a lot of evergreen funds come to market. There's a massive wave designed to make the investment into alts closer to the experience of public markets investing, right? More of like a hedge fund style investment. And we talk to GPs every day. Most of the big GPs have either launched evergreen fund vehicles or are in the process of doing so. Even talk to secondaries funds and fund of funds, and they're doing the same. So trying to capture that wave, GPs are absolutely focused on that through platforms and through vehicle structures. So what does that mean? It means that you're ultimately going to have, if you talk to KKR, it took them 30 years to get to 2,000 LPs. They estimate that they'll get to 10,000 LPs in the next 5 years. And so there is going to be an influx of investors that brings natural burdens associated with scale and operational efficiencies. And so we're sort of right in the sweet spot. I think we're going to see a lot more of this trend as GPs look to chase fees and chase more investors. And that's sort of, this is the pocket that is untapped for them. And I think they're going to do what they can to go capture this part of this wave.
Would you say it's fair to say like almost like the mutual fund, like the brokerage analogy, where in a mutual fund supermarket that you're starting to see some of these providers, Cass and some of these other ones, kind of replicate that with these alternative investment, kind of broad market, exposures. Hey, come in, got a platform. We've done our due diligence on these funds. We've taken the friction out of the ones that we do provide, much like what happened with mutual funds on the Schwab and Fidelity platforms.
Now, I want to ask something really quick, Mark. You guys will all recall in August this year, the current administration put forth an executive order. The title of that executive order was Democratization of Access to Alternative Assets. It really is opening the door for wider adoption. And to piggyback on what Mike said, that adoption would be through target date funds, managed accounts, collective investment trust. While great in theory, the adoption may take some time, and there's a reason for years that alternative assets were available only to institutional and accredited investors. They're incredibly complex, and they require a deep understanding of the industry and market. And Mike alluded to something, the secondaries market. 2024 saw the highest volume of transactions, some say as high as $140 billion, and 2025 is going to be an even bigger banner year. The telltale signs for growth are all there, improved infrastructure. And I also know it's because I'm getting more invites to conferences around the world for alternative assets. And I think the last thing that's going to help growth is there's a tremendous amount of dry powder. There's hundreds of billions of dollars sitting on the sideline. And GPs, LPs, they don't want to sit there. And so it has to be deployed somehow. And I think that the time has come for that to happen.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're even talking about, alt access into your 401k. I mean, now you're talking about a kind of a completely different investor that would be getting involved in that asset class. It is a really interesting time for the industry for private markets in general, but also, being fueled by the technology providers that do make it possible. Let's talk about AI more broadly. How is AI impacting the family office landscape, and where do we see family offices potentially missing the boat?
I personally believe AI is slowly changing the tech landscape for family office. And the reason why I say that is family offices have a tendency to not become early adopters of tech. If we look at a traditional bell curve, 2.5% on the right side are innovators. The next 12.5% are early adopters. 34% are early majority, 34% are late majority, and then 16% are the laggards. The vast majority of family offices fall into that 68%. They'll adopt AI once it's proven. And everyone I've talked to right now is in a wait and see mode. AI unfortunately introduced risks. And since most firms don't have a CTO, a CIO, or head of technology, adoption will be slow across the entire organization. Now, are family offices missing the boat? A little bit, but you can adopt AI by incorporating it into some simple tasks, scheduling meetings, taking meeting notes, sorting emails, summarizing documents, and even planning. You can dip your toe into AI without completely immersing yourself in the deep end.
Yeah, I do think, well, one of the ways they're going to have access to AI is through the vendors that they currently use as they update their product roadmaps, right? Canoe's a good example of that. What are you seeing, Mike?
Yeah, I'd say, just at the conferences I've been to this year, almost every conference year to date, the AI has been one of the breakout threat, kind of like the tracks, if you will, or has been the primary focus. So it's very buzzy. I think that I'd agree with Dennis. I think only a small percentage of family offices that you speak to feel really good about how they've implemented AI. I think they're just still early innings on trying to identify where to introduce AI and how to measure that impact. I think, Mark, you're spot on. Right now, the quickest way to get that exposure is through vendors who are innovative and are leveraging cutting edge and building cutting edge technology. But there's no question it's talk of the town. Everyone is front of mind for everyone.
Yeah, it's I think that they have a right to be cautious. I do think there's some, I think if they rush into it, or I think that one of the problems that family offices could have is they're so restrictive on it that this shadow adoption ends up happening where their clients are using, or their employees are using AI, and maybe not in a controlled way without the
Right.
guardrails in place. You need to balance that innovation with the proper guardrails. I think that's one of it. I also think, to your point too, Mike, with the vendors, like family offices should be having discussions with their technology vendors to understand what their AI technology roadmap is. I think it would be kind of a red flag if they didn't have an AI technology
Yeah.
roadmap. I mean, so a lot of the things that a tech vendor may be using AI for, it doesn't necessarily immediately impact them, or impact them in a visible way, such as writing code or QA, quality testing, reconciliation of first mile data, certainly other big choices. I do
Yeah.
think you're seeing on the RA side, AI adoption with meeting notes and meeting takers saving a lot of time. And that certainly can be applied to family offices when you're doing discovery, due diligence, having meetings with um, fund managers. That's a great way to be able to capture that information, to be able to catalog that information. Tell me about Canoe Labs and what you guys are doing on that front.
Yeah.
You guys have an AI innovation lab. Sounds really interesting, but I'd love to hear from
Yeah.
you directly on what you're doing.
Yeah. It's a nice segue from the last conversation. The reality at Canoe, we've been using AI for 5+ years, and the focus for us has been how can we create as much operational efficiency as possible. So our clients don't necessarily see or get to interact directly with the AI, right? Tool goes and gets documents, pulls data out. In some cases, there's exception, and that's where humans are brought in to identify and sort of make judgment calls. But historically, we've been focused on creating an operational output or experience that is second to none. As part of that, though, we've built up a collection of documents and data for our clients, a repository, if you will. We're also using, some of the most advanced, finely tuned LLMs in the space with a training data set that is unparalleled. And so our clients started, as we thought about our own, long-term vision and our roadmap, and we started talking to clients, it made so much sense that, hey, let's take those variables and think of them as an asset and give clients exposure to or access to the AI. And so Canoe Labs is really, it's twofold. It's an innovation hub, but it's also a sort of face to our underlying technology and a venue through which our clients can interact with their documents and their data more directly, can interrogate the information through a chat or a prompt-based experience. And so that's sort of where user experiences are going in general. And so you take the underlying technology that we have, set it on top of the document and data set that our clients have through Canoe, and you can get to, a really powerful front end for back, middle, front office users, right? So CIOs can go in and ask questions of their documents, can summarize information across multiple managers over multiple periods, can start to think about, ways to visualize the information. For ops professionals who are investing globally, foreign language information has always been a challenge. Let's use, labs to, sort of create a unified view of all the data and documents across English speaking through all of the non-English speaking and reporting managers. And so, that's been it's been really, really well received. Given the technology at play, we're really excited about how fast we can move. And so we're constantly engaged with our clients across back, middle, front office teams to assess where we can add more value. And this is certainly going to be core to our strategy there going forward.
But I mean, nothing's more intuitive than natural language and to be able to have a dialogue with your data,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And hey, amongst all my fund managers, tell me, who's an outlier on
Yeah.
fee structures or whatever the question
Yeah.
is. These professionals know how to do their job, and now they don't have to necessarily know how to
Right.
use the system, right? They
Yeah.
can.
And you take the collective, Canoe is a really unique shared footprint and shared intelligence. You take the collective of across our clients. Hey, what are some of the other prompts and questions that clients are asking of documents, right? And maybe that's, beneficial to your process. Or, beyond the managers in my portfolio, how do these managers compare on fees against the broader universe, right? So not just in the context of your own funds and your own investments, but across the entire market. And you obviously want to be, careful there, to not identify things that shouldn't be identified, but having that broader market perspective and visibility is hugely beneficial and can be hugely insightful. And we're really uniquely positioned to deliver on that. So those tenets have been sort of core to how we've built this and how we're trying to deliver value for our clients.
Yeah, that's the benefit that you have at the scale that you're at, that you can really
Exactly.
provide those type of insights. All right, gentlemen, time to put your Notre Dame's hats on. Let's talk of predictions. You want to talk Super Bowl predictions first, or should we talk about wealth tech?
Wait, I heard the Bears and 49ers match up in the playoffs at some point.
There we go.
I'll
That'd be a
take that
good
bet.
matchup.
Yeah, yeah.
Wealth tech. I know 5 years is an awfully long time, especially the way things are moving now. But where do we see the industry going? Say 3 years out. What predictions do we have?
Yeah, I was going to continue the thread that you talked about natural language processing. Most people don't know this, but Google Translate in 2016 was an AI-based system. They introduced AI, and it led to the ability for AI to comprehend and capture broad context via complete sentences. I personally believe we're going to be moving towards more verbal commands, much in the way Tony Stark uses Jarvis and Iron Man, his AI assistant. We're already using prompts, and I think it's only a matter of time before we're using our voice to kind of create that visual output.
I think that makes sense. Well, you'll get rid of the typing, right?
I love that. I love that, Dennis. Yeah, I think I'll kind of give a view on maybe the alts space, not necessarily the wealth tech space, but pseudo related, I suppose. I think there will ultimately be a central exchange through which GPs and LPs engage and through which information flows bidirectionally. Again, very similar to the public space. I think that's going to, allow for more transparency, more access, and more capital flow. So I think both sides are incentivized to move that direction. Selfishly, I think Canoe's really well positioned to deliver on that. But it remains to be seen who will execute on that idea.
Yeah, I hope so. I think that would be great. I hope it doesn't go the way of the custodial data feed, which really never got anywhere close to a standard and is kind of a crapshoot. But I love they ended this podcast on a personal note with 3 questions that have nothing to do with wealth tech. What is one skill or hobby that you may have that people don't know about?
I'll jump in. This may actually be well known because if you know me, I'm taking you out and playing golf, but I'm a big golfer. I'm a golf course architecture nerd, I suppose, design nerd. But golf outside of family and canoe, golf is probably the third biggest priority in my life.
So the whole thing, the history of it, the design of the
History, yeah, golf
courses.
course
Yeah.
design, and obviously getting out and playing as much as I can.
Nice.
I'm going to add something that's kind of different. I collect vinyl, and I've been doing so for 30 plus years. I
Nice.
used to be a DJ, and I DJ parties, dances, weddings, bar mitzvahs, underground parties. Today, I still have several thousand records. I have a beautiful console with turntables and a mixer, and on occasion, host little dance parties for my daughter and her friends here at the house. So that's something that I hold near dear to my heart.
You do like a bar mitzvah or something like that, if you need. I love it. Yeah, I gave up on my vinyl collection. I went over to CDs, and I know people love vinyl and the crackle of it. I flipped
There
it
should be
over. You
no
can have
crackle.
it.
Take care of your records.
I do love CDs though. The compression's so much better than the streaming. The kids nowadays, they don't care. Like they listen to music on YouTube. Like they really don't care about the audio
Yeah,
quality. It drives me
yeah.
crazy. Um, Favorite travel location?
Kiowa Island is the gem of all gems for me. We go down every year as a family and
Where's that?
down in South Carolina, just 45 minutes outside of Charleston.
Okay.
It's this sort of serene, quiet island right on the coast, great beaches. Um, and so our family enjoys going down there.
My favorite travel location experience has to be Japan. My
Hmm.
wife and I were there in 2017. We luckily had 6 days to explore. I love sushi. I love sashimi. I love ramen. And I remember Anthony Bourdain saying at one time, he quizzed a bunch of chefs and he said, if you were to only live in one country, where would it be? And everyone said Japan. So that's my vote. I want to go back there again soon.
Right. Sign me up for that. I haven't been. I want to go. Have you ever seen that documentary, Jiro Dreams of Sushi?
Great.
Yes, phenomenal.
Fantastic.
Very
Right.
good.
And I miss Anthony Bourdain every day still, man. He was a cultural touchstone for sure. I would have to say, like a couple of my favorite travel locations, and there's nothing exotic about it, especially in the US. Chicago, Mike. I love Chicago.
Yeah, there we
One of
go.
the
Come
great
visit.
cities in the
Yeah.
US. I put New York City up there too. I can, never get enough of those two locations. I think they're great, world-class cities. Um, the a book that you've read recently that you'd recommend?
Uh, Project Hail Mary by Andy Weir. He wrote The Martian, and Project Hail Mary is a similar kind of space-oriented, universe-oriented sci-fi. It's actually a movie's coming out, I believe, next year or 2 years. But it's a page turner and it's incredibly well written and well researched. And got sort of a little heartwarming element to it as well. So that's a good one.
Nice.
Everyone should read that.
I like that. I like good sci-fi. You can wade through a lot of crap, but yeah, I'll have to
Yeah.
check that one out.
I just finished Mamba Mentality by Kobe Bryant,
Yeah.
and I did not like Kobe growing up. I despised him, but I respected his work ethic. And one of the stories that came up was during the USA Olympics, while all the other players like LeBron and Dwayne Wade and Bosh were out partying, coming home at 5 in the morning, Kobe was in the gym working out, getting his
Hmm.
shots in. And I just keep thinking to myself, like, if you want to be really great at your craft, you should focus on that. So, Mamba mentality.
Yeah, I didn't like Kobe. I'm a Celtics fan, but I certainly had to respect him. And I mean, that Celtics Lakers matchup, and those are some of the best in sports. But certainly, definitely back when Kobe was in his prime back in the day, those were great matchups as well. So, gentlemen, this has been fantastic. I really appreciate you sharing your insights and sharing a little bit about yourself. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks, Mark. This was great.
Take care.